programmatic oversight of extramural activities in these areas. Dr. Penn received the BS degree in electrical engineering from the University of Illinois at Urbana, as well as MS and PhD degrees in biomedical engineering from Northwestern University. She performed postdoctoral and faculty research in the Department of Neurology at Johns Hopkins University. In 2000, she became the Clara Booth Lewis Professor of Biomedical Engineering at the Catholic University of America. Her research focused on developing computational models of the vestibular system in control of the head and the neck, and analytical tools for studying the oculomotor system in patients with vestibular dysfunction. Since 2002, Dr. Penn has been a program director at the NIBIB, overseeing various programs promoting the development of mathematical and statistical modeling and analysis methods, medical simulation tools, and next-generation engineering systems for rehabilitation, robotics, neuroengineering, and surgical systems. In 2003, Dr. Peng led the creation of the Interagency Modeling and Analysis Group, or IMAG, which now consists of program officers from multiple federal agencies of the U.S. government. Since 2004, IMAG has supported funding initiatives targeted to multi-scale modeling of biomedical, biological, and behavioral systems. Since 2006, IMAG has facilitated the activities of the Multi-Scale Modeling Consortium of investigators. Dr. Peng is now committed to promoting the development and use of intelligent tools and reusable models to accelerate biomedical research and translate scientific knowledge to the clinic and community. In 2020, Dr. Peng was elected into the American Institute for Medical and Biological Engineering College of Fellows. And now, with further ado, I'll hand it off to Dr. Grace Peng. Thank you.
Thank you, Sujay, and thank you to all the organizers for inviting me here today. I'm delighted to be with you. So if you can let me have some screen sharing, I will show my slides. Thanks.
You can go ahead now.
Thank you. And can you see my slides? All right. Well, as Sujay mentioned, I am from the National Institutes of Health, and today I'll be representing these programs, which Sujay mentioned, in addition to the BRAIN initiative and a new initiative called Bridge to AI. So as you probably know, the NIH is a department within with an agency within the Department of Health and Human Services, and it is the federal focal point for health research for the United States. And so we do steward medical and behavioral research for the country to enhance health, lengthen life, and reduce illness and disability. There are 27 institutes at the NIH, and I'm at one of the institutes listed here. And as Sujay mentioned, my programs here in this institute is to promote mathematical modeling, simulation, and analysis, which is different from many other programs at the NIH because most of the other programs are promoting research for certain diseases and conditions. So I just want to start by explaining what I do at the NIH. I'm a program director or a health science administrator, and there are about 3,000 of us. And what we do is we are responsible for spending taxpayer dollars for health research in the country. And so I listen to a lot of what is going on in the community. People send me their grant ideas, their research ideas. I attend workshops, I organize workshops. I figure out where are the next steps. So, and after doing that, I give out grant funds for people to do research to encourage them to work together. And basically what I do as a human being is I integrate all this knowledge together and I match it with my agency's mission. I also talk with other program directors from other agencies. And a lot of my time is spent talking with other program directors as well as a lot of researchers in the field to promote science. So I'm a knowledge integrator. So I want to quickly start by showing a video that my institute has produced that explains the technologies that we support at the NIBIB. And I will share another screen that shows these technologies. And so let me know if you cannot see this screen. Oop. And I want you to pay attention because I will be talking about it a little bit later on in my talk as well. Pay attention to the applications and how it's being used. Notice a lot of these people are moving in their environment. Might want to think about where AI is being used in these devices. These are just some of the medical technologies that we support in our institute. And these are the grantees that we have been funding at the NIH. Okay, now back to my slides. I will share my slides again. And so I encourage you to go to our website. Let me just, oops, hold on. I I encourage you to go to our website and take a look at all the science education. Oops, sorry. All right, can you hear me okay? Apologize for that. I encourage you to go to our website and take a look at all the other science education pieces on NIBIB. So basically what I do is I promote culture change. And what is culture change? I try to change the direction of research in the field so we can progress faster. And you asked me all here to talk about AI, artificial intelligence, and how it applies to medicine. And so what we do is we think about what has gone before us and all what that's led up to where we are now. And actually in 1960, a vision for cognitive assistance was proposed by J.C.R. Licklider, who is a visionary psychologist and computer scientist, but also, like me, somebody who funded research that led to most of modern computing. And he indicated that in not too many years, human brains and computing machines will be coupled together very tightly, and the resulting partnership will link as no human brain has ever thought. And if you think about self-driving cars and how cars are linked to what we do in the streets and on the road, this is a perfect example of artificial intelligence, as you probably know, from 2018 to 2019. And just last week, the Wall Street Journal announced that Waymo is opening up a robo-taxi service in San Francisco. So it's moved quite far. And so AI is everywhere. And for you attending this meeting, I'm sure you are aware of this, but I wanted to start with a tiny little quiz. I'll just ask the question, and if you can enter in your chat what it is, just so you can have some fun. So let me know what this is. This is everywhere that can be in our homes, and it listens to us and tells us things that we ask it. What is it? Yes, it's a personal digital voice assistant that uses voice recognition and natural language processing. And what is this? This says customers who bought this item also bought. And what is that? This is something that you would see on the internet when you go shopping. Yes, it's an Amazon recognition AI predictive algorithms with using neural networks. What is this? This is something that we use in our phones. We use now in medical research to look at images. Yes, it's facial detection on social media. And what is this? This looks like a map, and there's different spots, and there's different heat maps around. Yes, it's a heat map that Uber uses to predict rider demand for pricing in the San Francisco area, and that's AI. This one is interesting. I pulled up. It's something that one of the companies doing to look at emojis, and it's something that happens all the time. What it is AI tracking analytics, and it tells you how many people use which emojis the most. And a lot of, as you know, things are tracked. Everything you do on your phone, on the internet are tracked using these tracking analytics. So you are doing really well with, we currently have self-driving cars, facial recognition tools in the medical field. We are able to detect cancerous nodules in chest x-rays. We are able to improve the speed and interpretation of pathological slides, blood samples. We can classify skin cancer using imaging analysis. We can diagnose a heart attack from ECG data. We can find polyps in colonoscopy, and we can diagnose eye conditions from retinal fundus photographs. A lot of this is imaging and facial recognition, and that's currently happening now. And we call that narrow AI. And what we need to do next is to go more towards explainable AI, where we can actually increase the safety and security of AI and remove biases. We need to address ethics in AI and learn from small data and not just big data, and use new AI infrastructures. So the hope is that in the future, we'll go towards the R2D2s and C3POs and Jarvises of the world with general AI and cognitive assistants that truly can work with us. So this is from one of our grantees in the NIBIB, and Dr. Sodekinson said that AI can change how we gather data, not just how we interpret it. And just remember those words. That's really, really, really important. How we gather data and not just how we interpret it. So if you take an MRI scan of a brain, we interpret it, and radiologists use this information to help make diagnosis. And behind the scenes, we have a big MRI device that reconstructs signals from our body to make the images. Now, in the future, we can just go straight from the MRI to the information if the AI is smart enough. And so this is an example of how we can you can use AI to really reduce errors and increase accuracy. Now, this new program that we just launched at the NIH is called Bridge to AI. It's Bridge to Artificial Intelligence. And what we're doing is we're actually focusing on the data preparation part of the process of going towards AI. So this data preparation process actually takes much longer than the analysis process. In fact, a data scientist told me that it takes him maybe 4 years to prepare a set of data that he can analyze in 4 weeks. And that is that we want the data to be absolutely disambiguated. We want it to be well-defined, and all the attributes about the data documented. And so we formed a funding opportunity that's over $100 million over the next 4 years to get people to think about ethical principles in collecting the data, the standards that need to be used in the algorithms, the tools that need to be automated to collect the data in a standardized way and to acquire the data and then to disseminate the data. So this in itself is our whole program. Once our program is done, we can then put the data in a repository and let the AI modelers mine it and use it to understand big problems in our medical field. So this really is not business as usual. At NIH, most of the scientists do not go to such extremes to prepare their data. They start with a hypothesis, they do their experiments, they collect their data and publish it. But what we really want to do is first collect the data in a way that is amenable to AI analysis. And so we want, most of all, ethically sourced data. And so if you think about instilling the culture of ethical inquiry, we think about all the different things that we can collect from our bodies on this left slide, and think about all the different data types. And we can go into examples. For example, if we want to study conditions in the world, health conditions such as obesity or suicidal ideation or even the pandemic, we need to look at where these data are coming from. And for example, we can censorize somebody and measure those things in real time, but there's so many privacy issues and consent issues. We need to make sure in reality, these dumb machines can look at the data within the context in which it was collected so that it doesn't misinterpret what somebody is doing. And so we also focus on diverse teams. In order to collect this ethical data, we want to incorporate sociologists, social, cultural, economic, academic, industrial, and technical folks, philosophers, anthropologists. We want to understand any kinds of religious or social issues that might be involved in collecting the data. And so there's another video I'm not going to show, but we use big biomedical grand challenges to motivate this data collection. And the list is here in terms of digital twins, which I'll explain in a little bit, expanding AI, ML, and clinical care beyond just looking at images, but looking at multimodal data, looking at how one piece of data can inform multiple diseases, looking at how genomics can affect diseases and conditions in a multi-scale, multimodal way, looking at how we can look at movement to phenotype diseases and conditions. And also precision public health is something where, again, related to the pandemic, How can we collect data in such a way that we know the context in which people are working and playing in the environment? Salutogenesis is a term in which we're trying to understand how people get sick but return to health. And the mechanism of returning to health is something that's very not understood. Returning to 100% health, I should say. And so those are folks from our National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health. They're interested in alternative medicines that may address the holistic health of our medicine. So digital twins, it's a way in which we would interface physical sciences with the computational sciences and data scientists to interface a real-time dynamic model of whatever it is that we're modeling. So you can imagine there are probably right now being developed in industry digital twins of cars, trains, planes, automobiles. We know exactly when we need to go and repair something or replace a part. But can we have a digital twin of ourselves or parts of ourselves? And that is the question. And so I actually ran a workshop in 2019 talking about digital twins and how to integrate machine learning with mechanistic modeling of the human body, and trying to get our researchers to integrate machine learning and move towards AI in terms of creating digital twins. We currently have so many real-time health measures being collected through smart clothes, smart glasses, smart watches. We have sports and activity trackers. We have healthcare. Now, I want you to remember the video that I showed you, those 5 cool technologies that my institute supports. Remember, it talked about continuous glucose monitoring. It talked about continuous blood pressure tracking. And what else did it talk about? It talked about measuring white blood cells and breast cancer diagnosis and movement and touch sensors. These are all sensors that are interpreted currently by humans, by whoever's using these sensors. How can we get machines to understand these data? How can we get the machine to understand that your blood glucose level went up because you just ate a pizza or a chocolate cake? So we need to incorporate those contexts into the data so that the machine will understand and not just the humans. And so the idea is the future of health is we need to make health dynamic. We need to make the data dynamic. Usually we visit the doctors once a year for annual checkup, and we have 1 data point per year. We like to have more data points so that we can look at longitudinally how our health progresses and use AI models in the future to predict how our health will evolve in the future. And so another example is patient safety. So in 2009, the National Academies of Sciences produced this report called "To Err is Human, to Delay is Deadly." And it basically showed that deaths from medical errors occur much higher than motor vehicles, falls, drowning, aviation. And this was data from 1996. Now in 2016, another publication came out showing that medical errors have grown to become the 3rd leading cause of death in the United States. And this is actually an underestimate. 17 years later, 251,000 deaths annually. That's more than 5 plane loads of airplanes crashing every day. Of course, this is pre-pandemic. After the pandemic, the medical errors went to number 4. The pandemic was number 1. But just to tell you how critical this is a problem, because humans make errors in diagnosis and treatment. And so one of my programs in simulation is developing models, mechanistic and AI models, to emulate processes in which we do diagnosis and treatment. And so this grantee looks at how we can use computers to work in an immersive environment. So a lot of my grantees are creating very high fidelity video gaming, essentially visualizations. For example, it's super hard math to simulate cloth movement in a way that's high fidelity, or smokes coming from a cauterization tool. So those are examples where in the video game industry, you probably don't need such high fidelity, but in the medical industry, you need extremely high fidelity in order to make it a realistic simulation. So the idea is we want to have virtual coaches. And I will jump to another video quickly. In terms of virtual coaches, the idea is that we have medical students studying with human beings, and we have and the human beings are coaching them to explain to them how they should move in the surgery room, where they should operate. So the idea is, can we have a virtual coach for surgical procedures, especially for those who are not in training right now? And so I'm just showing you a video. This is for training for athletes. And of course, we also have training for musicians and a lot. But for athletes, they currently have this that they wear on their heads.
We're going for 20 miles, climbing 1,800 feet.
So this is a virtual coach for this athlete for you.
Let's push a little harder.
So why did it say it's too easy? Because he has sensors in his glasses.
Stop workout.
And the model knows what's too easy for this person.
Okay, radar, what's today's run? 7 miles and climbing 900 feet. Nice job balancing your effort. Keep it up.
How's my pace?
7 minutes, 32 seconds per mile. Just right.
Just right. That's the AI.
Stop workout.
Great job making it to the finish.
Thanks, coach.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that's just another example of where other domains have really progressed in AI, and in the medical field, we want to go in that direction. And so one of the culture change things that I do at the NIH is actually to try to encourage people to think like an engineer. I know I'm running out of time, so I'll go through these slides a little bit quicker. The idea is that we have to encourage people to think about modeling when they're doing medical research, because it really helps systematically archive and transfer knowledge. It's the only way to predict outcomes that's not otherwise testable, and drive emergent scientific properties, and to provide insight and understanding beyond cognitive capabilities. We want to promote a model-driven design culture that really promotes the discovery of new theories and new ideas through modeling and simulation. And this is where I'm going with AI. At the NIH and the Brain Initiative, we're trying to understand the human brain, which is probably the most complicated object in the known universe, with all the neurons interconnecting with each other. And so I'm actually mentoring an NIH data scholar, Dr. Mohammed Gassami, to develop this BrainWorks platform to use AI to collect all the data that's currently being published for neuroscience. And if you look at this, there's now the amount of publications published each year in neuroscience has increased up to 25,000. That's, if you really wanted to be on top of everything, reading about 60 to 70 papers a day, which is just humanly impossible. So we really need AI to really try to integrate knowledge in a way that we don't reinvent the wheel or miss any information that's been collected in the past. I also use this opportunity to dive into some of the other programs that are sponsored by the NIH to support data science and future AI modelers. We have a civic digital fellowship for college students to really work for 10 weeks. And I mentored 2 of these students last year, and they helped me work on a UI interface for the IMAG Wiki, which I run for my consortium. And so this is a great opportunity for college students to work one-on-one with us for a few weeks each year. Also, my colleague, Dr. Zainab Aram, has an undergraduate biomedical design challenge every year that has prizes, so you can look up the debut. As well, at the NIH, we have, on the research side, we have opportunities to do summer internships in college as well as in high school. So I encourage you to look at these links to think about doing a summer internship at the NIH. Now, I want to end my talk to briefly describe how I got here. I know in the introduction, you heard all the what I did. But I'll just briefly describe, my pathway to AI really was quite circuitous. When I was growing up, I didn't really think about AI. I was actually interested in designing engineering design, and I started getting into biomedical engineering because I wanted to work on human problems with engineering. And so I did analog circuit design, and then for my master's I looked at optics and microscopy. I looked inside a rat's head to look at his inner ear and her inner ear. And in Northwestern, I developed my first computer models. I was one of the first people to develop models to study the vestibular system and how people get dizzy. And I wanted to apply it more in the real sense of looking at patients. So I went to Johns Hopkins and I studied patients with dizzy problems. And when I was at Catholic, I actually developed the biomedical engineering curriculum and studied how we can use the rehabilitation to help these people with dizziness. Now, behind the scenes, there's a lot of engineering control. There's a lot of modeling that can occur. And in the vestibular neuroscience field, some engineers really brought in computational mathematical modeling to try to understand how we control our balance and dizziness. And so from Catholic, I went to NIH, and at NIH, I basically supported all these programs that I did in the past, in the topic areas that I did in the past, from modeling to rehabilitation. And then I got into biomedical informatics and data science because there was a need to actually better organize the data. And the AI, as we heard earlier, started with a thought in the 60s. And so it's reemerged because of the new computers and the new ideas for incorporating data. And so I guess I just wanted to tell you that when you're thinking about your career paths, you don't really know where you're going to be in 20 years or 30 years or 40 years, but I would encourage you to acquire as many skills as you can, explore as much as you can, and be more diverse in what you study. Study interpersonal skills and management skills too. Be bold, think differently, and don't afraid to take a leap and explore new opportunities. So I will end my talk with my email. You're welcome to contact me if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peng. So we were gonna ask you some questions. Do you still have some time?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. So are there any projects at the NIH, you probably already answered this, but that apply AI in healthcare that you are particularly excited about?
So as I mentioned, the bridge to AI is really exciting because it's really trying to get the whole community on its feet to prepare data in the right way. And the motivating ones are, the motivating problems are what get people excited. Can we create digital twins of ourselves? Can we use movement to really diagnose our problems? Can we actively track ourselves so that we can monitor our health? So we know that 30 years from now, we know that because we had, I don't know, a condition or an accident that affected, some of our health attributes. There's so many engineering techniques that can be used now to study our bodies. And so can we create little mini robots, or can we do synthetic biology to sensorize inside our bodies? How do we address all these things with ethics and privacy? So those are some things. But definitely a model-driven engineering approach to how we approach science at the NIH is something that's really, really needed and super exciting.
Okay, that's really great. And we have another question from a participant of ours. Can virtual twins or virtual surgery be done with today's machine learning technology, or should we have true AI in order to create these kinds of technologies?
Yeah, so people are turning in machine learning grants left and right, but a lot of the machine learning is just applied to a part of the project. For example, to improve the data that is being used for the mechanistic model. It's not used in a sense that it can actually make predictions at this point. So like the virtual coach that I showed you that helped the athlete run up the hill, that's not currently available for a surgeon in the operating room. But that's something that people are starting to put, all their videos of their surgeries in a database so that AI can look at the surgeries and decide which one is a good surgery, which one is a bad surgery. But we haven't gotten to the point of really cleaning it up to making it a real-time control. And that's the problem with having not so good data or data that don't talk to each other. And that's why making sure you prepare data in the right way is a high priority and a high focus right now, not jumping right to AI algorithms.
Okay, that's really great. Thank you, Dr. Penn, for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, Sujit, did you want to share the slides again?
Sure, 1 minute.
All right, so now we'll move on to our first workshop of the day, the AI and Entrepreneurship Workshop. So please join me in welcoming and introducing our workshop leaders to the AI and Entrepreneurship Workshop, Jessica Vartsnov and Zara Kieselbosch. Zara Kieselbosch is a rising junior at Jericho Senior High in New York. She lived all across the world, being born in England, raised in Singapore, and now attending high school in the United States. Zara has worked for various global foundations such as Kuma Cambodia and Blue Dragons, and has been involved in several fundraising events with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, as well as the American Red Cross. He is the Vice President of Fundraising for the Jericho chapter of the American Red Cross. And while only in high school, Zara wishes to pursue business, specifically finance and private equity. Passionate about helping kids with disabilities due to her own brother being deaf. Zara is the president of her own nonprofit foundation, Hope Stick Foundation, and has worked with a nonprofit bakery that was run by her peers. In her free time, she enjoys reading, watching shows, and socializing with friends. Jessica Barton is a 16-year-old rising junior at Jericho Senior High School. She's currently working on a political campaign for the re-election of a local county legislator, specifically in an intern outreach program to expand the internship program, as well as the finance program at the Wharton School of Business. Also, she's been involved in fundraising events with the American Red Cross to raise money for fire prevention awareness on Long Island. Furthermore, Jessica is highly involved in school extracurricular activities by being a member of the varsity tennis team and being in clubs such as Model Congress and Future Business Leaders of America. She wishes to pursue a career in business, mainly in finance and investment banking. She's also passionate about learning other languages such as Italian and Russian. And this year she won a silver medal after participating in a national competition in the National Italian Honor Society. In her spare time, she enjoys trading on the stock exchange, watching shows, and spending time with friends and family. I'll hand it over now to Jessica and Zara to deliver their workshop.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining Zara and I for today's seminar on AI, entrepreneurship, and healthcare, and how they're all interconnected. My name is Jessica Vartsnov. I'm 16 years old, and I'm a junior at Jericho High School.
Hi, everyone. I'm Zara Kieselbosch. I'm also both 16 years old and a junior at Jericho High School. So let's not waste any time and get right to it.
Before we begin, we wanted to provide some quick definitions of these three topics. And first, we're going to start off with AI. So what is AI? As stated, artificial intelligence is the ability of a computer or a robot controlled by a computer to complete tasks that are usually done by humans because they require human intelligence. Any task that a computer needs human knowledge for is considered an artificial intelligence task. These require quite a lot of time and effort, and you'd be surprised how hard it is to teach computers simple things that humans can do every day. Just take the English language. It's one of the hardest languages to learn because each word can be used in various contexts. And while the words don't have literal tones, humans do, and that can change how a word is perceived as well. Now imagine teaching that to a computer. Not so easy, is it?
Entrepreneurship is all about the owner or manager of a business enterprise who will, by risk and initiative, attempts to make profits. Entrepreneurs can help drive change with innovation, where new and improved products enable new markets to be developed and also help create change in our society. Healthcare, as it states, is the organized provision of medical care to individuals or a community. The fundamental purpose of healthcare itself is to improve people's quality of life by enhancing their health.
When a lot of people think of AI, they think of a room of robots, computers, and technology. However, many aspects of AI have begun to be used on a daily basis, and many of us don't even realize it. Zara and I will delve a little bit deeper into the advantages and disadvantages of AI, as well as how it has become such a prominent part of our society.
Most Americans use Face ID rather than manually typing in their passcode for one simple reason: it saves time. Many people are actually unaware that this is a form of AI.
We thought that we would share a quote by John McCarthy, who invented the term artificial intelligence in 1950. Every aspect of learning or any other feature of intelligence can, in principle, be so precisely described that a machine can be made to simulate it. An attempt will be made to find out how to make machines use language, form abstractions and concepts, solve kinds of problems now reserved for humans, and improve themselves.
AI presents a plethora of advantages and disadvantages. First, let's talk about the positive aspects of AI. Reduction in human error. The phrase human error stems from the fact that humans are prone to making mistakes. On the other hand, computers won't be making these same errors as long as they are properly programmed. With AI, the decisions are taken from previously gathered information, applying a certain set of algorithms. So errors are reduced and the ability of achieving accuracy and precision are possible with AI. Digital assistants. Many highly advanced computers have begun utilizing digital assistants to interact with users, which saves the need for human resources. These digital assistants are also used in many websites to provide things that users want. And the technology has become so highly developed that it can be hard to determine whether you're chatting with a chatbot or a real human being. Finally, faster decisions. Utilizing AI alongside other technologies can allow for machines to make decisions and perform quicker than humans. When humans make decisions, they often take the emotional and practical factors into consideration, while an AI-programmed machine takes what is programmed and delivers the results in a faster way.
Now, let's take a look at the cons of artificial intelligence. First, high cost of creation. AI is changing every day, and the software and hardware needs to be constantly updated in order to meet the latest requirements. There are plenty of high costs to take into account, such as repairing machines, maintenance, and then the actual AI machines themselves, since they're so complex. Next is unemployment. AI has been replacing the majority of repetitive tasks with robots due to the fact that it's cheaper to produce a robot than it is to employ a human being. Every organization is looking to replace their minimum qualified individuals with AI robots, which can do the same work but with greater efficiency. People are predicting that artificial intelligence will result in higher rates of unemployment in the future, which will negatively impact our economy. Lastly is the lack of emotions. Without a doubt, machines are much better at working efficiently, but the main component that these machines don't have are emotions. They're unable to replace the human connection and cannot develop a bond with humans, which is crucial in areas like team management or customer service.
Entrepreneurs like Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg clearly run American society, all because they each had a revolutionary business model that changed the lives of millions of people today. We all know that Bezos created Amazon, but many may not realize that he simultaneously created over 2.7 million jobs in the US. Amazon has more than 800,000 US employees all across the 40 states and 250 counties, and in addition to this, their investments have produced a ripple effect of more than 780,000 indirect jobs that help communities across the nation thrive.
The founder of Wendy's, Dave Thomas, says, "What do you need to start a business? 3 simple things. Know your product better than anyone, know your customer, and then have a burning desire to succeed."
Entrepreneurship presents numerous benefits, with the first being freedom. If you ask some of the most prominent entrepreneurs in American society, like Elon Musk, he will not deny that having the complete freedom to follow your own path and make your own decisions is one of the best parts of becoming an entrepreneur. In corporate America, most people like to go to work every day, report to a boss or a manager, and do as they're told. And most likely they're at the bottom of the social ladder as well. This doesn't exist in entrepreneurship. There are no bosses to report to or managers peering over your shoulder, and now you're your own boss. Next is control. Many up and coming entrepreneurs greatly value this. Lifting your own company off the ground requires tough and demanding work. At the end of the day, you are in control of every decision that you make, and you are doing it for the sole purpose that it is your goal. Having authority over the direction of your company is one of the most self-rewarding aspects of being an entrepreneur. Lastly, there's one of the more obvious ones, which is profit. When you work for someone else, all of your hard work goes to making other people richer. Now, all the money you make slides directly into your own pocket and in helping society, of course. This means that every company that you make successful becomes your own personal success. And as your business flourishes, so does your income. Although most entrepreneurs are mostly motivated by bettering society through innovation, having these large profits can prove extremely motivating for entrepreneurs on their road to success.
In discussing all the advantages of entrepreneurship, there are definitely some serious disadvantages, which is why it's so hard to create a successful startup. While we won't be discussing specific downsides to specific businesses, we wanted to address that earlier we mentioned the beneficial effects of Bezos and Zuckerberg's companies. However, it's important to mention that these companies have both helped our society as well as damaged it. Facebook has started social media, which has led to various mental and physical health issues, and Amazon is struggling with an environmental issue due to the high tree cutting rates. There are issues and consequences that companies may deal with later on, but we wanted to mention them before starting on the cons. Moving on.
Now discussing the cons to entrepreneurship. We can first begin with risk of failure. As we previously mentioned, one of the main benefits to entrepreneurship is that all of your business success become your own success. However, on the other hand, all your business's failures become your own failures as well. When you are the business owner, you take on all the risk that comes with starting a new venture. This basically means that instead of your boss or manager taking the fall, you have to, and often you have to risk your personal savings, time, and effort to get your business to succeed. Responsibility. Since an entrepreneur is in complete control of their company's decisions, then they're also in control of their company's future as well as their next paycheck. Going from a salary job to an unstable income can be extremely hard and stressful, which shows the great sacrifice that comes with starting your own business. While the end result may be worthwhile, shouldering the weight of the responsibility will be difficult in the beginning. And lastly, workload. Starting a new business and getting it off the ground requires serious hustle and hard work. Now, even if you hire employees, the majority of the grunt work will fall onto your shoulders, especially in the early stages. The strenuous work that goes into starting a new business or company can be exhausting for one person to manage and oversee. While it can be exciting and full of possibilities, the work most entrepreneurs have to endure may turn a lot of individuals away from becoming entrepreneurs themselves.
Entrepreneurship is a prevalent part of all of our lives because it can be seen in so many different forms. Most of you have encountered or participated in some form of entrepreneurship during your life. It could range from starting a lemonade stand when you were younger to knowing someone in your life right now that has started their own business. Entrepreneurship is extremely important as it has the ability to improve the standard of living and create wealth through innovation. Many entrepreneurs create products that are meant to better society, which ultimately all of us here are a part of.
Healthcare is an extremely crucial topic in our society and is well discussed by many Americans. There are various views on the topic of healthcare, and the topics of privatized versus publicized healthcare, free healthcare, affordable healthcare, etc. We will not be discussing these topics, but instead discussing the pros and cons of healthcare and how it is ingrained into our society.
Dave Reichart, an American politician and former veteran, says 1 in 7 Americans, including more than 8 million children, don't even have access to basic healthcare coverage. This is a shocking statistic because it acknowledges how many Americans cannot even afford healthcare.
Now, let's delve into all the positive aspects of healthcare. Obviously, I think we can all agree that saving human lives by allowing individuals to gain access to proper healthcare is a tremendous benefit. According to a study performed by Harvard researchers, lack of health insurance is associated with as many as 44,789 deaths per year. And in turn, this number translates into a 40% increased risk of death among the uninsured. Also, another study demonstrated that more than 13,000 deaths occur each year just in the 55 to 64-year-old age group due to a lack of healthcare insurance coverage. Giving individuals access to healthcare has shown to boost economic productivity because they live healthier lives, miss less work, which in turn allows them to make greater contributions to the US economy. According to Institute of Medicine report, the US economy loses $65 to $130 billion a year annually as a result of diminished worker productivity due to poor health and premature deaths among the uninsured. Finally, healthcare has been shown to encourage entrepreneurship due to the fact that after the introduction of Obamacare, the number of self-employed individuals increased 150,000 between 2015 and 2016. Furthermore, 6.1% of people looking for jobs started their own companies in 2016, which marked a 4-year high.
Although healthcare is so beneficial for millions of Americans, there are several downsides to consider. Starting off with the increase in US debt and deficit. Social programs that provide a right to healthcare for less fortunate individuals totaled less than 10% of the federal budget in 1985, but are predicted to reach 30% of federal spending by 2028. According to the former US House Committee member Paul Ryan, government healthcare programs drive the explosive growth in our spending and our debt. Also, the federal budget calculates that the US universal healthcare coverage would result in an additional $19 trillion of federal debt, causing debt to rise astronomically in America. Secondly, a right to healthcare could lower the quality and availability of disease screening and treatment. Nations that have adopted a universal right to healthcare have seen worse disease treatment outcomes than the United States. For instance, the US 5-year survival rate for all cancers is 67%, compared to 60% in Canada and 54% in the UK. Also, each year, there are fewer cancer deaths per 100,000 people in the US than in Australia, France, Germany, Norway, and the UK. Furthermore, all these statistics clearly show that the US has an extremely effective healthcare system than the ones of various other countries around the world. Finally, a major concern displayed by many individuals in the medical field is that a right to healthcare could potentially lower doctors' earnings. Medicare is a system in the US where the government pays for individuals' healthcare expenses, which has been shown to reduce the payments being made to physicians. In Canada and the UK, two nations which have been at the forefront of providing universal healthcare coverage have reported incomes 15 to 51% lower than that of US doctors. The average physician income in America is $299,000 compared to around $256,000 in Canada and $147,000 in the UK.
Now, we are going to discuss one of the most important aspects of healthcare, how it actually relates to our lives.
Entrepreneurship is made up of various components such as finance, marketing, human resources, management, and even more. Some businesses either solely use e-commerce to sell their products or to implement it into their marketing strategy. AI now has been connected to all of these elements, specifically in finance, marketing, and e-commerce. AI technology is used to better predict market trends and competition. Entrepreneurs and businesses find it crucial to keep up with the market and what's going on with their competitors. By AI's predictions and support, finance businesses can better manage their expenses and investments. Additionally, marketing is also so important in a business. Through AI marketing, businesses will find it more efficient to create customer profiles and choose which techniques to help market their products, including learning which techniques will be the most effective in the long run. Lastly, when you're on a website buying a product online and a chat box pops up, that's AI as well. That allows for easier customer service, and your problems may be solved easier, faster, and in a more convenient manner. These are technologies entrepreneurs and businesses invest in order to become more successful and to see higher profits.
Healthcare is such a huge field and has various benefits. There's some genuine room for improvement as well. AI has helped provide the technology and solutions for some of those issues to improve. With artificial intelligence technology and AI robot-assisted surgeries, it is proven the percentage of surgery success will increase in hospitals. This is a huge reason for the implementation of AI in the OR or in a hospital, as the technology itself helps aid in saving lives. It has also helped protect classified information and patient records against cyber trolls and hackers trying to break into the hospital system for information. This will improve safety in computer systems and prevent further record breach as seen in the past. Lastly, artificial intelligence technology will help decrease the number of patients that have been misdiagnosed. The same as the robots that will be used in surgeries. These robots will know which signs and symptoms to pick up as part of what diagnosis. While humans may unknowingly make such errors and misdiagnose patients, hence providing the long treatment and medication, artificial intelligence will not do as such.
Okay, so to end off our presentation, we'd like to play a fun game with all of you. I'm sure we're all familiar with Kahoot. Here's a link to the code, and now please open up Kahoot on your phones or laptops and join in.
I'll put it in the chat. This is it. Is it okay if I present now, please? Okay. Give me a second. Let me just. Okay. Give it another minute. Okay. I'm gonna stop the game. Does anyone else have to join? Okay.
Sorry, I think we have one or two people who are still trying to join.
Okay. Let me stop the game. Okay, so sorry, give me a second. Sorry. Do that. Let me skip this. I'm gonna end game and start over because that's the only way for me to go back. Give me a second. Let me stop sharing for a second and start again. Sorry. Okay. Okay. It's okay. Here you go. So here's the code again. I'll give it a couple of minutes this time. I can't see the chat, so if everyone's done, could someone please let me know? So I'll start the game. Oh wait, another minute. And then I start.
Type in the chat if you're still planning on joining.
Yes, please.
I think we can get started.
Okay, thanks. Thanks. Okay. Just for people who got it wrong, it doesn't require human assistance. Yeah. Is facial recognition a form of AI? Just to... God. Nice. It's not. When it's a spam filter, it's like people blocking cyber hackers. Just to be clear. Nice. That's fast.
Nice job.
Okay. Is that AI? That's actually surprising. A lot of people get this wrong. Fun fact. Okay. Okay, so you can choose more than one answer, basically. So choose all that are correct. Okay, so it doesn't create more jobs. It takes away jobs because the things that people often jobs that people can do, AI can do instead. So that's why it doesn't create more jobs. Just to make that clear. A con of AI is not that it increases accuracy, that's a pro, and the fact that it allows people to do less work is also a pro because unfortunately we like things being done for us as people. So okay. Yep. Nice. Control of your own business is a pro. That's a good thing. Okay. Humans would not be able to survive without entrepreneurship. I mean, we could, but in this world we live in now, which is this advanced, we wouldn't be able to. I think back then, I guess definitely a couple centuries ago, we would have, but not now. So just to make that clear. Yep. Only a couple left. Congrats to Gaurav though for staying on top. Nice. Okay. Healthcare increases economic wealth. It doesn't increase economic productivity. Everyone cannot afford healthcare. It's a controversy in our society today. I think the answers are pretty self-explanatory for this one. Yep. 3 more to go. Yeah, it is. Oh my God, Kriti, as you should. It doesn't help increase in employment. In general, I guess in some aspects you could argue that it may, but in general, it does not. It just takes away. I believe it's the last question. Yeah. Okay. So, cures diseases. AI doesn't necessarily cure diseases. I don't think that's something humans have to figure out first. But yes, congratulations to Conquest, Gaurav, and Kriti, I believe. That was a nice time, Kriti, just saying. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Zara and Jessica, for that great workshop. So does anyone have any questions for Zara and Jessica? So please feel free to ask in the chat and or in the Q&A. Okay.
I think just to reply to Nissa, I think that's your pronounce your name. Sorry if that's not. She said it requires people to do less work, which would be a con as it would make them lazy. I feel like that's a bit of a debated topic because some people don't like, for example, when we open our phones and we use Face ID instead of typing in a password, people like that. But you could also argue, oh, it makes you lazy because you just, it's just something that you do so quickly. I feel that's like it can be debated in different areas, while in some ways, like simple doing house chores around the house, like vacuuming stuff, like you have robots to do that. And people could argue that, oh, it makes kids lazy, for example. So that's definitely true, like you're 100% right. But in other aspects, when it comes to more technological, I guess things in businesses and healthcare, these two specific areas, the things that humans don't, I guess, would require more effort to do, AI can do that much easier, which saves us a lot of time, and that time invested in doing those things can be focused on other things. Hence why it would be more of a, I guess, a pro in this element. But you're 100% right, it could be considered a con too. That's all.
Okay, that's great. Just a question from our end. What advice would you give to someone who wanted to start a company on a topic that usually isn't addressed?
Well, I think the first thing obviously is to do a lot of research to know what you're talking about. And then you just basically you have to I know it sounds cliche, but you have to believe in yourself and your product so that you can be able to make a real impact if that's what you're going for, to try to better society. Because anyone can come out with a product, but if you have the motivation and passion to pursue it, then you will ultimately be successful. And I think that's what differentiates entrepreneurs from people just trying to make a business.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you for your time, Jessica and Sarah.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just reshare my screen and we'll get started. Okay, Nikhil, you can take this over.
Nico, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, we'll have a quick break and we'll be back around 10:40 EST.
Sujay, you can leave the PowerPoint slide up.
Okay, I'll start. So, hello, my name's Arush Sambui, and today I'm going to be introducing you guys to the cell and how the knowledge of the cell in biology evolved from the 1600s to now, and how this knowledge impacted the AI and medicine fields today. So first I'm going to be giving a talk, and there are going to be 3 parts. After the first 2 parts, there'll be like 5-minute breaks in case you guys are on breaks. And then after the talk here, there's a time for questions if you guys need anything to clear up on or have any confusions. So I'll start with the first part, which is the conquest to understand the notion of the cell. So let me share my screen. So the cell, and then by the speakers Arushan Bui, me. So part 1, as I said, is conquest to understand the notion of the cell. So biologists, or more broadly scientists, in the 1600s did not religiously test and examine specimens or artifacts in laboratories right away. They just wondered and envisioned solutions in their mind. So scientists such as, I'm going to refer to these figures as scientists, even though they did and do work other jobs. I'll explain why. So even though these particular people were botanists, authors, etc., and many more, scientists could serve as a general term for these occupations. My reasoning is that the dictionary defines the term science as the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. So if you think about it really, one who studies the art of stringing words together or even setting the emotion in oneself and telling a story, that's a writer. The one who understands the behavior of the individual colors and their interactions and can also interpret the sub-interactions as a whole painting, then that's an artist. But aside from my rants to continue, the conquest for society to really grasp the notion of the cell as it was a really new thing really started out with a scientist named Robert Hooke in the year 1665. So Robert Hooke was generally a well-read and spectacular scientist and person overall. He was what we call a polymath, which means he can learn or do pretty much anything and work on anything. Born on July 28, 1635, scientist Robert Hooke was educated at Oxford and spent his career at the Royal Society and Gresham College. He grew up initially interested in painting and was a quick learner. He then continued his studies, adopting new interests here and there, and was eventually appointed the curator of experiments for the Royal Society of London, which was a rather new organization in 1662. He was, as many say, the Renaissance man of England in the 17th century, particularly for his vast work in many scientific fields, not just biology, but fields such as chemistry. Hooke's portrait is on the left, as you see here on the slide. And the picture on the right shows the primitive, if you will, microscope used in Hooke's observation of the cell. So Robert Hooke was like a child on Christmas Day when using his microscope. He observed pretty much any living specimen and some dead. He could get any specimen he could get his hands on, such as fly heads, fleas, and even cork, which I'm going to get into. When Hooke observed cork under his microscope, he noticed that the rectangular structures, as you see here, kind of look like the cells in a monastery. So that was then he coined the term cell, because he thought that these little compartments in the cork look like the cells monks lived in a monastery. Robert Hooke also deduced that the small scale structure of cork explains its large scale properties. So what I mean by that is that since he observed that air was preserved in the dead plant cells, which are here, as you see in the picture on the right. I'll explain what plant cells are in a bit, but this is what he thought made cork float, since there was air preserved in the compartments of these dead cells, and that made cork float when placed on water. And he was right. And this goes back to how I stated that Robert Hooke was a polymath, because what I just talked about is a little bit of chemistry and a little bit of physics and biology all combined. So additionally to observing, Hooke also drew everything he saw under his microscope. What you see on the left side of the slide over here is Hooke's drawing of what he saw when he observed that cork. And remember that this microscope in Hooke's days is not as advanced as microscopes today in laboratories, obviously, and every cork will have a similar but not the same exact configuration of cells, of dead plant cells. So Hooke's drawing on the left will not look similar to the modern day picture on the right, but you can still call Hooke's drawing accurate. And if you notice on Hooke's drawing that where you see B, where it is labeled B, you can see these rectangular structures all connected into a kind of blob shape. So Hooke looked at those rectangular So each of those rectangles are what Hooke coined the name of cell. So that's why we still use the name cell today. So aside from that, on the right is a cork tissue you'll see under a modern day microscope, as I stated. And you guys should really take into account how much engineering and evolution went into developing these instruments that were used to really get this cork tissue picture. The difference between these two pictures expresses just that. Through the infinitely small and the pretty large, sweat rolling down their face, and millions of test tubes, sometimes scientists over the years found that answers they were yearning for and some did not. So, and you can just simply observe the difference and quality of the drawings. Keep in mind this is a drawing, but still it accurately represents what Hooke saw on the microscope. So you can just compare the left picture and the right picture and see how much we have come in terms of developing instruments that are used for biology today. So revisiting Hooke's observation of the cork, you might be wondering why he didn't coin the term cell when he observed fly heads and fleas, because there would be animal cells, dead animal cells in the fly heads and fleas. Well, multiple reasons might be why, but I'll just name one. The most obvious one is that you might already know fly heads and fleas both have animal cells in them, as I stated, which are way more complex than plant cells, slightly more complex, and more strenuous to observe and differentiate the different parts, especially under Hooke's microscope, which was not as advanced as today's microscope. So now we know a little bit of how knowledge of the cell came to be, but how do we know about the properties of a cell and how it works today? Well, the answer to this question is it all started with the cell theory, and I'll touch on the cell theory after a 5-minute break. And at 11 o'clock, I'll start the lecture again. So you guys can take a 5-minute break if you wish, like a bathroom break or something, and then I'll start and make sure to be back by 11 o'clock. So 2 minutes until I start on the second part of the lecture. So just make sure to be back by 11. The end of the 5-minute break. So I assume you guys are all back and settled. So I'll start on the second part of the lecture, part 2, which is cell theory. So just as a recap, we just talked about Robert Hooke, part of his biography and part of his life, and how the term cell came to be and the history behind the cell. So now we'll talk about the cell theory. So the cell theory is really a set of rules or facts of the cell that was developed through the 1800s and part of the 1900s. And there are 3 parts to the cell theory. So one, all organisms are composed of 1 or more cells. So in the 1800s, 2 scientists, both are German, really helped complete and really string together the cell theory to what it is today. One of these scientists, Matthias Schleiden, a botanist, suddenly realized that every single plant he had observed was made up of cells. On the left is a portrait of Matthias Schleiden, and Theodor Schwann, the other scientist on the right, studied the other type of cell, the animal cell. He then came to the same conclusion as Schleiden, but with animals. He concluded that all animals were composed of cells. And after hours of observing slides of animal cells under his microscope, he came to that conclusion. And that's how the first statement, or postulate, if you will, came about. So we know that the first rule is that all organisms are composed of 1 or more cells. Now we'll talk about the second rule, which is the cell is a basic unit of, now we'll talk about the third rule, actually, sorry about that, which is all cells come from pre-existing cells. So after this astounding observation in that time, as this observation today would seem obvious, but in that time, this was new information. Schwann reached out to other scientists in his field, and after Schleiden got back to him, the 2 started their journey in completing the cell theory. Now they started to explore and converse on the third part of the cell theory, which is that all cells come from pre-existing cells, like I said before. So Schleiden did not agree with this statement at first because he thought that cells randomly appeared here and there. However, Rudolf Virchow, another scientist, came with evidence and proof that cells, in fact, do come from pre-existing cells. And the interesting thing, though, is that this research was stolen from another scientist by the name of Robert Remak. Robert Remak is on the right, and a portrait of Rudolf Virchow is on the left. Rudolf Virchow was really the Pink Panther of his time. So I'll backtrack to the second statement now that we have an understanding of the first statement, which is that all organisms are composed of 1 or more cells, and the second statement, and the third statement, which is all cells come from pre-existing cells. So the second statement of the cell theory is that the cell is a basic unit of structure and organization in organisms. Schwann and Schleiden, with the help of the work of other scientists, realized this as I kept on observing and experimenting. As I kept on observing, especially under the microscope, these scientists accepted that the cell was a foundation of all life because every living organism was composed of cells. And if you really think about it, the cell is the smallest unit of life because it's obviously single cell. So cells absorb nutrients, reproduce, excrete waste, and respond to their surroundings, external stimuli, and etc. This vast functionality of the cell helps organize the function of the structure it lies in. For example, in humans, there are cells dedicated to forming bone structure in the skeletal system, and also different cells that help aid the body in handling nutrients in the circulatory system, and much more. So in this way, the body can function on its own and maintain homeostasis, which is the ability and of an organism to maintain stable conditions that are needed for survival. For example, there's a group of cells that make up your skin and protect your inside from the outside world. These cells are skin cells, which were shown in the title slide, which are here. This is a picture of what skin cells look like under a microscope. So now the cell theory is a core concept of biology that you should understand very well. So if you have any questions regarding the cell theory or how it came about, then you can ask them now, as well as at the end of this session if you forget your question. So if you guys have any questions about the cell theory or about Robert Hooke, as discussed in the first part of this lecture, then you can ask in the chat. If there are no questions, then I'll continue. Okay, so it seems like there are no questions. So I'll continue with the third part of this lecture, which is how this knowledge about the cell theory and about Robert Hooke and how the term cell was coined and how it came about, how this knowledge catalyzed the improvement of the AI and medicine field. So in Hooke's time, the 1600s, medicine was pretty much essential oils and natural substances that were either known to help a certain condition, whether by past experiences, some beliefs, or some other cause. There was very little experiment, or none, in fact, as in laboratories under strict settings. Here's a glimpse at what medicine really looked like in the 1600s. So this is specifically how it was in Europe in the 1600s time period. But medicine around the world was pretty much the same at this time. So as you see, these medicinal practices are rather primitive compared to how we go to a regular doctor's office and they prescribe medicine if we are sick. So, but as the years went, in the early 1900s to the 2000s, medicines started to be developed. And a quote from Britannica: in the first half of the 20th century, emphasis continued to be placed on combating infection. And notable landmarks were also attained in endocrinology, nutrition, and other areas. In the years following World War II, insights derived from cell biology altered basic concepts of the disease process. New discoveries in biochemistry and physiology opened the way for more precise diagnostic tests and more effective therapies. And spectacular advances in biomedical engineering that enabled the physician and surgeon to probe into the structures and functions of the body by non-invasive imaging techniques such as ultrasound, sonar, computerized axial tomography, CAT, and nuclear magnetic resonance, NMR. So as you heard in the quote, that people became aware in the pretty much the early 1900s and the 2000s that the death rate was increasing, and they now focus on really combating infection and trying to lowering these death rates. So come today, pretty much every medicine is developed with knowledge of the cell. Otherwise, we won't know how the human body will react to the medicine and whether it will actually cure or help the sickness. Now, prescriptions are created to assign doses or a stronger hospital grade. By hospital grade, I mean not off the shelf medicine, depending on the severity of your sickness. Now, aside from how the knowledge that Hooke and the other 1800s era scientists discovered of the cell impacted the medicine field today, there are many cases where the AI and medicine field go hand in hand. For example, that's where cell imaging comes from. Live cell imaging makes research less intensive, allowing scientists to more efficiently observe cells when needed. So a quote from Cintica.com on the definition of cell imaging and how it really helps in the observation and development of modern day medicine. So live cell imaging is an umbrella term that refers to a plethora of methods that use time-lapse microscopy to observe, track, and quantify dynamic processes in cells or subcellular systems. This type of imaging is vital for a variety of fields: cell biology, development biology, neuroscience, biophysics, molecular biology, and cancer biology, to name a few. While imaging of fixed cells can provide a useful snapshot of cellular behaviors, live cell imaging removes the events that occur between data points and provides greater information about the dynamic processes which otherwise may be challenging to obtain. Additionally, there's no debate that information held within living cells is much more likely physiologically relevant to the understanding of cellular processes. And how really do you think today the scientists developed the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, so quickly, and we know what the COVID virus really looks like? That's partly because of cell imaging that allowed them to really observe and experiment rather quickly. So yeah, that's really the close of the lecturing part of this workshop. I will post a link to the Google Doc that contains some of the additional resources if you want to explore more about the cell. As of now, we only know the cell as a singular being, really. We don't yet have knowledge of the inside working of the cell and its parts, but you can study. I'll give resources that will aid you in learning about the parts of the cell and how they work together. But we now know that the history behind the cell and how knowledge of the cell impacted certain modern day fields such as AI and medicine and many more. So I highly encourage you to read up on these resources. Now, we will start an interactive activity, which will be a Kahoot, and I'll post the link in chat as well as the resources doc. So the link with the resources are posted in chat right now. You can type in chat if there's some type of accessibility issues, then I'll fix the link. But as of now, it should work. Okay, and then now we will start the Kahoot.
Arush, can you hear me? Sujay, do you have the link to the Kahoot?
I don't think so. Let me. Okay.
So I'll
one.
share my screen now. So give me a minute.
Okay.
Do you guys not see the link? I posted it in chat at 11:15. I'll post it again. Just type in chat if you, oh, sorry, my bad. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I sent it to the panelists by mistake. So now you should see it. And just type in chat if the link is accessible. Oh, sorry about that. Now, can you guys see it? Okay, yeah, really sorry about that. My mistake. So I'll share my screen now to the Kahoot Game Pin. And what you want to do is go to www.kahoot.it and type in the game pin where asked. I'll send the link in the chat. And I'll make sure to send it to everyone this time. Here, and the game pin is 3853205. The game pin and the Kahoot link is in the chat in case you guys need it. And I'll give you guys like 5 minutes to join. And then when everyone's joined, I'll start the Kahoot. So now there are 5. Okay, now it's coming. So I'll give like 5-6 minutes for everyone to join. And I'll get the direct link in case that'll be easier to join. Okay, yeah, there's 7 people. So if there's any difficulty in joining, I can post a direct link in chat if anyone needs it. Okay, yeah, I'll wait. Okay, yeah, sure. So we'll start at 11:25. So make sure to just join by then. If you have any problems joining, then I can assist you. So 2-minute warning, and then I'll start the Kahoot. And just so you know, while we're playing, you can join. The game pin isn't chat, so if you want to join later, then while we're playing, you can still join. Okay, so it's right around 11:25, so we can get started with the Kahoot. Do you guys not see my screen? Uh, do you guys see my screen? Okay, yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, yeah. So just remember that Robert Hooke was the person who coined the term cell, and he was the first person to see cells under the microscope. So here, the next question. So here's the leaderboard, and we'll start with the second question. So around 20 seconds left. There's one more person to answer. Okay, so Matthias Schleiden he discovered that, he was the one that discovered that all plants are made of cells, and then which contributed to the rule that all organisms are made of cells. So here's the leaderboard. So the third question. So remember that there are 3 rules to the cell theory. Cells can only come from other cells. All living things are made from cells, and cells are the basic unit of life. So good job, Kruti, for the answer streak of 3. So the next question. Okay, good. Everyone got this right. So remember that microscopes were used to observe cells as multiple scientists such as Schwann and Schleiden developed the cell theory. So next. Okay, good job, Gora, for an answer streak of 4. So the 5th question. So I only talked about this for a little bit, but if you guys are paying attention, then you should know this. Okay, good. So majority of people got it right. But remember that Rudolf Virchow was a scientist that Robert Remak stole the research from, and that research helped prove Schleiden wrong, that cells do not spontaneously generate. They come and exist from other cells due to cell reproduction. So again, good job, Kruti, for answer streak of 5. Next question. So just remember to read the answer choices and question carefully. Okay, so it was Rudolf Virchow that concluded that cells could only come from other cells, as I said, the last question. So some people are confused on that one. So next, here's the leaderboard. Okay, so 7th question. So this question, I only touched on this earlier, so it's okay if you guys don't remember this, but I'll recap if majority gets it wrong. So it was, okay, good. So majority got it right. It was July 28, 1635. So that's just something to remember. There's really nothing to it. So here's the leaderboard. Okay. Good job, CG, for 7 correct answers in a row. So this question is about Robert Hooke and his observation of cork. So it was the cell. Remember that Robert Hooke was a person who coined the term cell, and that's why we know the cell. That's why it's named cell, because of Robert Hooke. And remember how when he observed cork, the rectangular structures, which are actually dead plant cells, look like cells in a monastery. So that's why Robert Hooke coined the term cell. So next question, and here's the leaderboard. So good job, Alfred, for 3 in a row. So there are 4 minutes left of this workshop, so just answer as much as you can. And I did not touch on this in the lecture, but it's fine if you get this wrong. It's just good to expand your knowledge about really Robert Hooke. Just take a guess at this question. And some questions in this Kahoot I did not touch on, but it's just there for your knowledge. So good job, most people got it right. But as I said before, this is just something to remember. So here's a leaderboard. As I said before, questions from now on are like new. So just to expand the knowledge. So just take a guess at this. Okay, so seems like there are 9 answers. So yeah, majority of you got it right. It was London. Like normal, these are just convenient things to remember. It's not really that significant. And good job, Alfred, with 5 correct answers in a row. So just read the question carefully. I know I mentioned something about Robert Hooke and his college, but that's not the college Robert Hooke attended. He attended a different college. So just take a stab at this, see if you get it right. And there are 2 minutes left to the workshop, so just keep that in mind. So yeah, most of you got it right now. Good job. So yeah, so I'll end the lecture. I'll end the workshop here. It's 11:39. So good job, Kruti, so here are the standings. So good job, Alfred, for 3rd place, CG for 2nd place, and Kruti for 1st place. So good job, guys. And Gaurav was 4th place. So good job, Gaurav. So yeah, so that's it for the Kahoot, the interactive activity for this workshop.
Cool. Thank you so much, Arush, for taking the time to speak with us today and your really informative workshop. So I think we have time for a few quick questions if anyone wants to ask any in the chat. To get started though, so obviously like right now, AI has a huge part in the healthcare and medical industry. So do you think this impact of AI will continue to like exponentially increase in the coming years?
Oh, I don't think Arush's audio is working, Nicole.
Oh, right. Let me type in chat then.
Sure, yeah. Sudhu, do you want to share the slides?
Yeah, 1 minute.
So there was a great question in chat. So the question was, right now, AI has a huge part in healthcare and medical industry. Do you think the impact of AI will still continue to exponentially increase in the coming years? So yeah, I think that in my opinion, AI will continue to exponentially increase, and because of now humanoid robots are being developed, as you know, and just to advance more in the medicine field, develop more effective medicines. So yeah, I think really the use of robotics and coding in general will really help the medicine, not just the medicine field, but the world. As you know, there are already robots in hospitals operating on people. So yeah. So if that's the last question, then I hope you guys learned something, and I strongly encourage you guys to pursue biology in like school or just as a hobby, and just to read up on the resources I provided on the doc, and the link was posted in chat if you guys need. So yeah, thank you for, yeah, you're welcome, and thank you for a great audience, and bye.
All right, thank you, Arush, for that. Yeah, that wonderful workshop. Nikki, Sudhu, do you want to go to the next slide? Yeah, so now we're gonna be having a lunch break, snack break. It's kind of early, but we'll be back at 12:10 to have our college research panel, and we hope to see you there. So we'll leave this up. You can hang around, but we'll resume with the panel at 12:10. Thank you. Sujay Sahan, are you there? Okay, yeah, so it's 12:10, so we'll get started in the panel in a second. Yep.
Sorry, were you saying something?
Yeah, Sujay, it's 12:10, so we can go on to the next slide and get started with the panel.
Okay, sure. Just give me 1 minute.
All right, and it looks like our third panelist is currently as an attendant. Sujay, I think you have host, right? Would you add her as a panelist? Sujay Sahan.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, I did.
Okay. Yeah, so hello everyone, welcome back from the lunch break. We're now going to move on to our college research panel. Our moderator that we had scheduled has a family conflict, so I'll be taking over for them right now for this panel as a moderator. So our panelists today, sorry, my camera. Okay, so our panelists today are students and who have spent years conducting research in college and conducting work in the industry. So very excited to have them here for this panel. So please help me out introducing Trevor Hu, Hafiz Adigun, and Olusegun Omatayo. So I'll go through introductions for all three of our speakers, and then we can get started with the panel. So just as a reminder, we have our own questions that we'll be asking the panel first. And if at any time you have any questions, feel free to put it into the Q&A feature on Zoom, and we'll relay those questions to our panelists. So Trevor Hu is a senior at Georgetown University studying biology and statistics. Throughout his time in college, he has been involved with several research experiences. At Georgetown University's Neurophysiology and Behavior Lab, Trevor investigated social behavior and cognition in zebrafish by tracking and clustering their movements with an analytical software. He's also worked as a lab assistant at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, where he performed data analysis for their gene therapy program. From his research experiences, Trevor has come to appreciate the science and collaboration that comes with working in a lab. Al-Hafiz is a first-year medical student at Georgetown University School of Medicine and Health Sciences. He has his Bachelor of Arts from the University of Maryland at College Park, where he majored in African American Studies. During his time at Maryland, he conducted nutrition and obesity research at the Kennedy Krieger Institute in Baltimore, Maryland, at the Association of University Centers on Disabilities. In addition to this, he has completed public health research within the African American Studies Department, where he successfully presented his senior thesis. Currently, his interests are related to the social determinants of health, and he is conducting clinical and translational research with a renal transplant surgeon at George Washington University to see how health literacy can be used to mitigate the risk of kidney disease. Our third panelist is Olusegun Omatayo. She is a computer science major, a product marketing intern at Bandwidth Inc., and has just started volunteering with Nutrify as a head of their digital marketing team. All right, so now we are going to move on to some questions that we have planned for our panelists. And again, if you have any questions at any time, feel free to type them into our Q&A chat and we'll relay those back. So our first question is, a lot of our audience here today are high school students. How would you advise high school students to go about pursuing research opportunities? And we can start with Trevor for this question.
Yeah, okay, hi, nice to meet everyone. Yeah, so in terms of getting research opportunities, that can definitely, I think, seem like a daunting task, and especially, in high school too. But I would say the biggest recommendation I would have is to just, feel free to email, a lab PI or principal investigator. And yeah, just kind of browse around, like if there's a research facility or like a hospital near where you live, that would probably be your best bet to look for some opportunities there, or if you live near like a university. So yeah, just don't be afraid to like there's usually like contact information posted on any particular lab's website. So I think that would be, a great starting point there. Or if you know anyone like personally involved in research and you think what they're doing is interesting, I think it's totally fine to, ask, hey, is there any availabilities in their lab, or do you know of any other lab that does similar things that might have an opportunity to get involved with? So yeah, I think that'd be where I'd start.
Yeah, Hafiz, Oluseun, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, so actually when I was in high school, I actually struggled to find research experiences myself. I remember applying for a program that was sponsored by the NIH. I forget the details of it exactly, but it was fairly competitive because at least just from my experience, it's not, research labs they don't tend to be geared to they're not really like looking for high school students, So if you have to really be proactive if that's something that you're seeking out. So I remember applying to the program and I was very disappointed when I didn't get in. And one of my friends got in, I was like, I wonder why was he so special? Because I remember they only selected like 2 people from each high school in the region. So you can imagine it's not like there were just only 2 people that were looking to get into research experience with them. So I would say, even if you don't find those experiences that you are looking for, don't be discouraged, because later on in your career, if that's something that you really want to do, there will be an abundance of opportunities for you to do that. It's just going to be about you being persistent. So yeah, I'd really just say don't get discouraged. But I think that Trevor's statements were pretty spot on in terms of how to go about finding research, particularly like if you reach out to a lab and they're telling you that they're not available or they don't have open spots, and they can refer you to somebody else. And also just kind of relying on connections. So if you have like a family friend or something that works in a lab or knows people, really kind of use that, because to just have to cold email labs, especially the high school student, that's kind of daunting. I can't really imagine emailing 50 different labs like, oh please, there's a lot. So I mean, if you're ready for that, for that level of I guess I don't want to say commitment, but of intensity, then by all means. But you can work your way up to it. It's not everybody has to do it right now. So.
Yeah, that's great. Because I know when I was starting out, I started doing research in high school. And actually, the way I got it was through a friend who started a project at a local university of mine. And she started it as her senior project. And I was looking for research opportunities, and she was aware of that. So the way I got mine was just she handed off her project to me, and I just kind of took over from there. And I've actually continued working in that lab since then. But yeah, I mean, it is very difficult, especially as a high school student, to find those opportunities. I know that I've personally applied for a lot of these NIH programs and stuff. But the problem is it's just so competitive, especially for high school students. And I would definitely encourage somebody, if someone's looking for an opportunity in a lab, you don't have to stick with just those traditional programs. It's worth it to look out on your own. And a lot of the PIs that are in those programs also are open to just kind of getting an email from you asking, can I join your lab? And letting you join their lab outside of that program. So it doesn't hurt to ask. It never hurts to ask. And cold emailing can sometimes even work. All right, so we'll move on to our next question, which is, when did you start and what got you interested in pursuing a research opportunity or area of study? And we can start with Oluseun.
Okay, I'd say mine was more of a personal experience. Let's see. So I'm an international student, which means I'm not from here. So I'm originally from Nigeria. And I got to personally witness and experience the lack of access to prosthetics back home, and how if you go through some sort of amputation, your life is over. So when I came here, I was like, okay, I want to focus on that. And currently my research is on improving data loss and just energy consumption in wireless body area networks. I'm hoping to go from there and get my grad school degree in biomedical engineering, where I pursue making smarter prosthetics and just finding a way to provide access to things that are otherwise expensive right now in developing countries. So I'd say mine was really personal. Kind of it for me.
Yeah, that's great. I know that biomedical engineering as a field is just like it's just become so much more enriched, especially with how AI has like opened up so many more opportunities. And like now you have all these different programs that can do pretty much the same thing that doctors are doing, or like especially like in terms of like identifying malignancies and stuff. And I think especially for kind of underdeveloped areas where the cost of medical care is a big roadblock. I think like the technologies that are being created by biomedical engineering is really important in helping those areas and just kind of lowering the cost and barriers to entry. So Hafiz, do you have, you want to talk about what got you interested in pursuing your research opportunity, your area of study?
Definitely. Also, can you guys hear the washing machine in the background? I apologize if it's really loud.
No, I'm not hearing anything.
All right, awesome. So I actually started doing research when I was a freshman during my freshman and sophomore year at the University of Maryland. I applied to a program at the Kennedy Creek Institute in Baltimore, Maryland. It's like an adjunct hospital with Johns Hopkins Hospital. And I guess the way like I got the project, I was just like applying, to different programs and stuff. I remember one day, I think the dean of diversity and inclusion like sent like a list of email like, hey guys, like here's just like a program, like go ahead and apply. So I applied and I got it. I was really excited. But really like my research was kind of, it was independent in the sense that like I was like the one kind of controlling the direction and was able to kind of like decide how things were going. But really it was also very, very much so guided. I was only an incoming sophomore, or rising sophomore, so it wasn't like I was ready to take on an entire, like develop my own hypothesis and all this jazz. So really, the project placement sites was kind of based on like most of the people in the program were actually doing their research out of Hopkins, but because I was commuting from Burnsville or Silver Spring, which is in Maryland, they decided to place me at a location that was closer to me because they thought that would have been like easier. They wanted to do me a favor. And so that's how I ended up getting placed at the Association for University Centers on Disabilities. And at first I was like, dang, like I wanted to be at Hopkins. Like, why? I was gonna be driving here regardless. Like it doesn't matter. But no, it was a great experience. It was really cool. It brought me into, it like opened my eyes into a lot of the sensitive determinants of health that people with disabilities face, and the role that healthcare practitioners and policymakers have to try to alleviate those things. And so really what I did during the program was a research evaluation of an existing program. And so that's when I really learned a lot of basic skills that are still very useful for me today, and that I'm constantly trying to enhance, but like creating like a lit review, which is when you have a specific topic that you're learning or that your research is related to. And so in order for you to like, I guess properly discuss the ideas or the research involved in that, you have to like basically synthesize all the papers written on that topic and what are they all saying? Like what is the big key takeaways? So I learned how to do that. I forget what it's called now, but because my research really has been more public health based. I've never really done like lab bench research or anything like that. So I really have the name of the other thing, but yeah, I really learned a lot of basic skills that are still very useful today. So that was really where I got my start. And then from there, the reason I ended up working with my research mentor in the African American Studies department was because she actually used to be a program like coordinator. I don't know if that's the word, but like she was like a facilitator for the program that I was doing at Kennedy Krieger, but she had just moved on from that role to University of Maryland. And when I was like the program was coming to an end, and they were like, my mentors at the program at Kennedy Krieger, like, Hafiz, what are you going to do? How do you plan to continue this the stuff that you've been doing or that you started here with us? And I told them about this woman that I was interested in continuing doing research with. And they're like, oh, really? Like, her name is Dr. Bell. You're like, you know, Dr. Bell, like, you know, she used to work with us. And then they kind of like connected it from there, and it was just very seamless. So that was like a small world. You'd be surprised. So that's why I think it's really good to explore your networks and, you know, talk to people. You never know who people know and what they can do for you.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, is about how finding one opportunity can open the door to like so many others that you didn't even know existed. I've definitely seen that in my own research, where just kind of taking on one research opportunity opens the door to like a dozen others. And it's always about just taking that first step. And once you find that first opportunity, just having the commitment to stick with it can like lead to some much more interesting opportunities that kind of come closer to, even if you start in a field that's not exactly what you're looking for, you know, just getting that first research opportunity can put you one step closer to what you're really looking for. And Trevor, same question for you. When did you start your research, and what got you interested in pursuing your research opportunities?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say my kind of path was similar to Hafiz's, where I didn't really start doing research till the summer after my first year of college. And so that was first with that gene therapy program at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston. And so that's where I'm from. The reason why I kind of wanted to do that one was, like, prior to that experience, I'd been reading a lot about CRISPR technology and gene editing. And I thought that was really, you know, fascinating stuff. But at that point, I hadn't really taken genetics yet or anything. So I didn't really have a strong background in that. But I have a family friend who does work at Dana-Farber. And so she kind of gave me the contact information for some of the labs that she would recommend maybe helping out with, or labs that could use extra hands. And so that was kind of how I landed into that gene therapy program. And so, yeah, in that summer, I got exposed to a lot of different topics regarding genetics. Similar to Hafiz, I didn't really get to do, you know, like my own independent thing. Like, they didn't just throw me in and kind of make me do everything on my own, but they did kind of provide a lot of opportunities for me to do my own exploration, or kind of like think for myself in a way, whether that be like designing certain primers for an experiment or whatnot. I thought that was, you know, a really great experience. And I think transitioning like into that my sophomore year of college, I knew that I really wanted to continue doing that research. So I still do that genetics research kind of remotely, but the other research lab that I work for right now it's at the medical center at Georgetown. And so for that one, I again kind of had a connection to that lab, where I had a friend from high school who was working there, and one day he just like offered to show me around the lab and what he does. And, you know, one thing led to the next, and I really kind of became fascinated by the neurophysiology and working with the zebrafish. And even with that, I still was able to do data analysis. And so that was kind of a skill that transitioned from my genetics lab into this lab. So I thought that was also very helpful. And yeah, I got actually a question from someone asking if technology had a big role on my research. So yeah, so technology, I think, because I do a lot of analysis work with my particular field of research, yeah, technology is a big part of it. And prior to that, I didn't really have a super robust background in programming or anything really. So I think with research, you know, I was able to, you know, learn a lot of things along the way, and I'm still learning, to be quite honest. All the technology, you know, that's never really something that's static necessarily. It's something where you kind of just always just got to work at it bit by bit. And yeah, I'd say it's very rewarding to work with the technology too, because it's fascinating how like, oh, like this process becomes a little bit more efficient, like a little bit more easier for me. And I feel like, you know, it definitely enables me to do more with like a limited amount of time.
Yeah, I would add on to that, because I'm actually very familiar with Trevor's research. The research that he's doing with the zebrafish and clustering, and one thing that I noticed is that like every month there was a new program being released or a new software being released that made the research a little bit easier, because what the research is trying to do is identify behaviors in zebrafish. And it feels like every couple of months, like there'd be a new big software out there that everyone was using. And I think that just kind of shows how it's easy to think of healthcare, like the life sciences and computer sciences, as like two completely separate topics, but really they're very closely linked. And how the life sciences is moving forward and how like Trevor's research is moving forward is based on advances in computer science and kind of the link between those two fields, which I think is a really important distinction, is a really important link to make, is that like these two fields aren't as separate as people think of them. And Trevor, one follow-up question for you is, I know that working in the lab can be very different than taking classes in the classroom. How have you felt that the skills that you learn in the lab and the kind of the proficiencies you develop in the lab have translated to success in the classroom?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say one of the like kind of first things that came to my mind when you asked that question was big skill is just like collaboration. So collaborating with Bajit at times, like, and working together to figure out a problem, whether that be with the technology or whatnot, that having that teamwork skills is something that can translate from research to classroom to like any kind of setting basically. And so I think basically when I was taking classes, I'm a biology major, so I still take a lot of courses that are similar to the science and the research that I'm doing, but still kind of distinct. But regardless, whether that like just doing a lab for a class, having that ability to communicate my thoughts and my findings with the rest of the lab members, that's a skill that really comes in handy in just science research and beyond, like anything that you could think of.
Yeah, Hafiz and Osnoon, do you want to add on to that? Like how has doing research in the lab contrasted or helped you with doing work in the classroom or in like labs at school?
Sure. I'd say one thing that I really noticed was that I had to start asking for help. And like when you're like researching, like there's like Hafiz said, I also had to read a lot of research papers, and I was like, I am not sure what I'm reading. I do not understand what's going on. And I have this personality where I try to figure out things myself. So I'm like, I've been given this task, so I want to figure it out myself. And I learned the hard way that no, you're not supposed to do that. I had a team that I was working with, so I had to start reaching out to seniors and asking them, okay, when you face this problem, how did you go about it? So it kind of got me to the point where I learned that it was okay to ask for help. And that's something that's very important in college. There might be times where like things go way over your head and you're like, I'm not sure what's going on, but like, you just need to open up just need to open your mouth, and you'd be surprised that other people like absolutely know what you're doing and like they will help you get through that.
Yeah, that's a very great point about how it can always, like when you're starting out in research, it can always feel very intimidating, and it can always feel like you're kind of out of your element. But the truth is that the people around you are there to help, and they understand that, and they're there to guide you. Hafiz, do you want to add on to that on how the classroom differs from the lab?
I think it's very different. Again, I didn't work in a lab setting, and just worked like, I guess, a lot of the research that I was doing, I was doing virtual research before virtual research was like a thing in the pandemic, because it didn't require me to be in person. Everything I needed was online. But it's different in the sense that, I mean, in a classroom, there's only so much that you can learn. Like let's say you're taking like a organic chemistry or like a like cell biology or something. There's only so many topics that you're going to cover in that time, and you're not really learning the minutia of it. You're really just trying to get the big picture and understand. But when you're doing research, you're really narrowing in on like one very specific element and trying to like really understand it. And then I can say for myself, as a medical student now, this is like what week? I'm about to start week 5 on Monday or Tuesday technically. And every day I'm in class, I just feel like, wow, like it just makes me appreciate and respect the profession so much more, because it's like all these people learn all this stuff to be able to do what they're doing now. And it kind of just shows you like how much you really don't know. Like when I forget who was saying, it was Trevor Bajit that was saying like you always feel like you're constantly learning. Like that's literally what it is. The learning never stops. So that's something you want to do. Like you have to really have a love of learning, because It's just gonna keep coming in. But I would say, like, at least for me, my little classroom work has been more collaborative than my research, because my research was really just me and my PI. So I would do stuff. I would talk to her, kind of get help, like kind of guide me, and that was it. Whereas in the classroom, you have like group projects, or you have your study groups, you have people that you're working with to try to understand the material. So that's something I would say. And also the research, like it's kind of more, mine at least was more flexible. And I know this is, PI stands for principal investigator, forgive me. But that's basically like, the way it works is like, if your principal investigator will be the one that came up with the project idea that is going to, that's the main person who's like doing, or depending on what your role in the lab is, that has the idea, that has the project, and then underneath him will be like, or her for that matter, postdoctoral students. And these are like people that have done PhDs already, but they've gotten their PhD already, but they're getting additional research experience to like boost their resume at an additional institution or CV. And then underneath the postdoc will be like other graduate students, you get like master's students, or people actually like actual grad student, like PhD students. And then underneath them will be like undergraduates, and I guess underneath them will be like high school students. And so that's kind of like the hierarchy of work. So really the postdoc, at least in my experiences, and again, I'm not postdoc, or a PI. I haven't worked in a lab in that setting where it has that structure, but usually like from what I understand, like the PI tends to be kind of hands off. Like they may have like they'll have like lab meetings once a week, or a couple times a week, just to make sure everybody's on the same page and doing stuff. But ultimately, like they're not the ones really doing the like day-to-day ground of the research stuff. No, all that stuff gets delegated further down. They're the ones like trying to get grant money, and is guiding the people underneath him or her, like if they have questions and how to like do stuff. But ultimately, like because it's their idea and they're the ones guiding it, they'll be the ones that are, going to get the most credit for the work because it came out of their lab. Like they're the ones funding it. They're the ones that kind of put it in motion, but they're there as a resource. And then like every chain of the ladder is somebody else that you go to help with or get help from, or they would delegate something for you to do. So like if you were a high school student or like a college, like the role that you're doing will probably be fairly simple in like a lab. But every step of the rung that you go, more responsibilities will be given to you, and you'll be asked to take on more. And it really just depends. Like again, for me, like when I did my senior thesis, like that was a spinoff of work that I was doing with my mentor already. And I was like, okay, like I won a grant money from my university to do my own like project, like a summer research project. And so I had to like create my own like project and like everything. But because I was already working with my mentor, she really just helped guide me through the process. And like that was the person that was going to be working with along me like every step of the way to make sure that I got it to completion. But you're still like ultimately everything is on you at the end of the day. But that's a resource for you. That's your main resource. So yeah, very.
Yeah, that's all very great. I think you kind of touched on this topic of the hierarchy in the lab. That's something I want to talk about a little bit more is for most of our audience who hasn't done research before, what's the culture like in a lab or like just any research setting or real place work setting? What's the culture like, and how have you felt it affect your workflow, and how have you felt that has it been conducive to your workflow? Has it hindered your workflow? And just kind of what are your thoughts on the culture of lab research? And we can start with Ola soon.
I think you mentioned my name, right?
Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry. You're good. Let's see. Well, I haven't really worked in a lab like your regular lab. Most of my work can be done from my computer because like I'm a CS major and I'm working with a CS professor. So most of the stuff we do can be done virtually. With regards to hierarchy, I'd say it starts with the professor that you're working with, and then seniors who've been working on the research, and then finally you, well, me in this case. Let's see, it hasn't really affected my workflow. It has honestly been great for my major because it really aligns with most of the things I end up learning in class. So it's just like, okay, I'm just getting ahead of my mates. It's been really, I don't know if people enjoy working remotely, but I do. So it's been really great for me because I just get to work from my house. So it's fun.
Yeah, building on that, just in general, like I think you said that like you enjoy working virtually. I know I enjoyed working virtually. Just to everyone, how do you think that COVID has impacted your research? Like, and yeah, just in any sense, like has it affected the goals of your research? Has it affected like the skill set that you've developed to conduct your research? Just in general, how has COVID affected your research? And Trevor, you want to start with that?
Yeah. So I guess it didn't really affect the genetics research that I was doing a whole lot because I was already remote with that one. But then with my zebrafish research, I'd say that was fairly impacted. That was just because like I was just starting, like in that March of 2020 time, I was, starting to work with the zebrafish more and trying to do a little bit some more hands-on stuff and kind of working directly like face-to-face with my PI or principal investigator, which I thought that was pretty helpful. But then when we had to transition to a virtual format, I mean, Zoom is, I guess, fine for that. But I think, yeah, not having the ability to work with the zebrafish wasn't ideal, but we were able to find some alternative videos to analyze and still kind of hone in skills involving behavior tracking and analysis. So that was good. And then I think another good thing was like not being in the lab kind of forced me to take a step back from my research and kind of just take a deeper look at like what I was trying to do and what directions that I want to take it in. And yeah, I think that's kind of helped me, give me some more better direction moving forward from all of that.
And Hafiz, I know that your research, specifically with GW, has to do with public health and actually going out and doing some outreach. How have you felt COVID affect that, and how have you seen the effects of that in your community?
Yeah, so in regards to, I can talk about my experience at GW and as well as my undergraduate research as well. When I was doing my undergraduate research for my senior thesis, one of the things that I was learning how to do was the statistical methods, and I was taking a course that was going to teach me, I forget the name of the language I was going to be doing or using, but I was taking a statistical methods course to be able to analyze the data once I completed it. But then because of COVID, the class that I was taking, we couldn't take it in person anymore, so then we didn't have access to the lab software virtually. So ultimately, the class ended up just being like a statistics refresher course as opposed to like a class where they teach you how to actually do the methods. So because of that, I never was able to learn the methods that I needed to run the data. And so it kind of pushed my entire timeline for completing my project back. Like I was supposed to submit my thesis and defend it in the spring, like in May, because I graduated in May. But because of what was going on, they were like, we're going to give you an extension. I didn't end up actually completing my project until the early August. And so during that time, my mentor she obviously knows how to do statistical methods. So she's the one that ended up running the data. And it was just like on me to be able to analyze it, but like I never got that actual skill of like being able to do data analysis with statistical softwares and whatnot, which I do think is a skill that's important to have if research is something that you want to do in the future, depending on the kind of research, I guess. Definitely if you're doing like behavioral and social science research or public health research, like studying different languages is very, or maybe not different languages, but understanding a language is going to be something that'll help you stand out from your peers. So that's something that you want to, like, if you're like, how can I make myself like stand out from somebody else, learn R, or learn Stata, or another like statistical or a CAS. And these are like different like statistical methods that you can say, like, you go like to an interview or something like, hey, or even like if you email a PI, like, hey, I want to do research, blah, 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 blah. And I also know how to do like this. They might be like, wow, like that's kind of impressive, like kind of young to, like, where did you learn how to do that? And that these are just things to help, I guess, separate yourself from other people that might be trying to get into the same thing that you're doing. At GW, the research that I'm doing is now more like clinical and translational based. And so the project, we're having participants come in to our clinic and we're giving them renal screenings. So essentially we're giving them a kidney test, or urine test to test their urine for the presence of protein. And we're also giving them a blood pressure test. And we're just trying to synthesize these like data points and see, whether or not they're at increased risk for kidney disease. And then from there, we give them like an intervention to say like, okay, you need to go see like a primary care provider or a nephrologist, like a renal specialist, or maybe you don't have to do anything right now, you're fine, just monitor it. And so there's other aspects of the project that are involved as well in terms of trying to improve their health outcomes. But the one thing I can say that I've and Baljeet has helped me with the project as well, that's how we know each other, is that because of COVID, the number of participants that we would normally get is like dropped dramatically. And I only started working with the project this summer, but from what my understanding is, prior to COVID, they would normally have, like when they would do the screenings, like 30 participants at a time, like that'll come in that day. And now, like the last couple of times that I've done it, they only like the most I've seen was like 5 in a day. They would get like 3, 4. And so it's made it harder to get the same amount of data that you would want to be able to conduct your research on, to draw conclusions from. So that's been kind of challenging. If you do a month worth of screenings and you expect to get like 90 participants and you get 6 or 8, it can be kind of frustrating. But luckily for me, I didn't need I only needed preliminary data from my project. So I didn't need like a whole very robust thing, and I have time to continue to collect data. And I will be returning to the project again during the summer. And hopefully I can return potentially before that, once I'm able to get handle with school. But yeah, so it's definitely been a challenge. And I think they're thinking about going back, because the whole reason they went to a bi-weekly format was because of the volume of participants they were getting. Before it used to be once a month. Now they're going to go back to once a month, because it's like, why do we need to have so many dates available if we're not going to be getting a large volume of participants? So
yeah. Okay, that was great. Yeah, we can move on to the next question. So we have a question in the chat. Is this still the AI learning we did in the morning? So this panel is focused on college research in the health sciences. After this panel, we'll be discussing the AI Ideathon competition and how that's going to be structured as well. And then during tomorrow's workshops and speeches, that's going to be covering more comprehensive AI. But yeah, this panel is specifically focused on conducting research in college in the fields of computer science and healthcare. So moving on to our next question, this is moving a little bit away from research. What is the most important lesson that you have learned as a student leader? It doesn't have to be in a specific role, a student leader on campus, student leader in an activity outside of school. And what advice would you give to less outspoken students who are interested in being a leader in their own school or community? And we can start with Hafiz on this one.
I was just going to say, I noticed the question in the chat from Gaurav, I believe, and he asked, what is the most complicated part from conducting research? For me, I guess what was the most challenging was I just didn't realize how much time prior to, so like the other projects I had done were really like just during the summer, but my senior thesis, that's like a capstone, that's kind of like a synthesis of, it's a much larger project. And so I started working on that my sophomore year, spring or summer, because that's when I got the grant. Like I got accepted to get the grant money, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, sophomore year, junior year summer. So 2018, and I didn't finish doing that research until my senior year. So like it was almost like 2 years of work that I was doing. Yeah, cause I got the grant money between my sophomore and, anyways, yeah, it was a lot of time, and I didn't realize it was a lot of nights. I was like staying up very, very late trying to do stuff, and it was just like, wow, like this is a lot. Like there were so many different revisions. I probably went through like 20 different revisions of my paper, like back and forth. Like I would come do something and I send it to my PI. She's like, yo, no, fix this. Send it back to me. All right, yeah, no, you got to do this. Where'd you get this information from? I need to see the citations. Go back. Why, when you say something, because like everything that you say in the paper, like you have to, it's just written in a certain way. It's not like casual language, like the way we're talking now. Like everything you say is like for a specific purpose, and it's supposed to be said in a certain way. And because of the implications of what you might be saying, if it's not like very precise and specific. So it was just like a lot of revisions. Also like having to synthesize like a works cited, like all the work that went, like it's a lot, you know, like imagine you're not keeping track with that. If you're not keeping track of all the citations that you're using and you write something, you're like, wait, where in the paper did I find this from again? Like, why did I like that? Now you have to go and look for that. So no, it was really, I would say like one of the things that really helped me out was I had like friends that were really supportive of me. Like when I would, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Discord, but like it would be like, especially during the pandemic, you know, you're by yourself, you haven't seen people in like a long time. It was in like August. I was like getting ready to present, and they'll be on Discord with me, helping me out, like, you know, just so you're not lonely or bored when you're doing your work. But even like just having people to present to, because like when I had to present, and when like I was like my first like real like research presentation, not I won't say real research presentation, but like I've presented previously, but like in terms of like a PowerPoint presentation, I'm sure like when you're in high school, like a lot of it is like, oh, you have a bunch of stuff scattered on the slides. Like you know, you kind of just put pictures just for fun. Like, oh, I think this would look nice here. And then you have like words. And no, like when you're presenting like a research paper, is literally just like, it's only stuff that's specifically relevant to the project. And you have to be able to talk about it from what's on the slide. Like there's no, like you're reading off the slide, like no, like you better be able to explain like this, especially because when I did my thesis presentation, you know, I'm presenting to my professors, like professors in the department. So like you're not presenting to some peers, but a lot of these are like doctors, you know, like they're PhDs. So it can be very intense if you don't know what you're doing. Like they're gonna ask you, like when you show them your statistical methods, like why explain this result? Like why do you think it's like this? What would happen if it was different? So you really have to like know what you're working on. So that I would say there's definitely challenges, but if you practice enough, and which is why I was saying my friends were so helpful, because I was able to practice presenting to them, and they could tell you where you were messing up and where you went and like what you can do better. That was really helpful. But yeah, just know like if you're doing research, you're in it for the long haul. It really made me realize like, you know, some of these papers that take like 5-10 years to publish, there's a reason that it takes 5 to 10 years to publish, because, you know, that's the length of time that they had to make sure the results were right. Even just like doing the actual data collection, all that stuff. It's legit. So, but that's not, none of that is to deter you, just so that you're aware of what you are going to get into. And getting granted, like as a high school student, you are not going to be doing stuff on that level early, like so early on. Like you work your way up to it, but they definitely will put stuff on your plate, and it's like, okay, can you finish it? Can you like take care of this? And just to wrap up again on my part, the question was again, how to become a leader on campus if you're not very vocal or outspoken. I would say there's different ways. Like leadership doesn't necessarily always mean that you are like rah, like you are on the scene, like in all these different places. I think being a leader, you know, I think for example, I would say Bubji is like showing his leadership capabilities right now, like in terms of his involvement with this seminar and how he's presenting this like opportunity for people to be a part of. That's definitely leadership to me. And I don't imagine, you know, he had to go around like waving posters and whatnot to get his point across. You know what I'm saying? So I think really it's just a matter of finding your niche. I don't say like you should set out like, oh yeah, like I want to be a leader. It's like, what do I like to do? How can I impact that space, and how can I be involved? And ultimately, if that's something that is an innate ability within you that you're working towards achieving, you'll find yourself in those positions. You know, you'll do stuff that's going to actively put you in that role. So that's what I would say.
That was great, Peace. Yeah, I think both of those questions are very good, and I'll direct those to Olusun now. We can start with just being a student leader, and then after that we can talk about the most challenging part of research. So first, what do you think is, what advice do you have for students who want to be leaders on campus, at their school, in their community, who are less outspoken?
Okay. Let's see. This is gonna sound really weird, but don't be intimidated. And I know why I say this. Like you're like, well, if you're in high school and you're going to college soon, like this huge place, and you're gonna feel so out of place. But once you start, like, just ask a friend. If you have an idea, let's start from there. If you have an idea, be willing to tell someone. Share your ideas with like your friends. Even if you feel like, oh, you can't go all out, share your ideas with a friend. You'd be surprised how many people have similar ideas, and you guys can work on it together. Let's see, what else? Build friendships with your professors and instructors. They will recommend you when you're not in the room, and they will put, that will provide opportunities for you to step out of your comfort zone. Let's see. Okay, I'll just share a quick story. Like when I came from high school to like college, it was so weird for me. My first semester as a freshman, I was always at home, in the library or school. There was no in between. I wasn't trying to make any friends, but step out of your comfort zone. When people invite you to events, just go and be willing to volunteer. Okay, volunteering is something that has taken me a really long way. That was the only thing I did my freshman year of college, because I did robotics in high school. So I was like, my school has this robotics event, so I'm gonna go there and volunteer. And I still have like the best relationship with that department right now. And they've provided so many opportunities for me to go to high schools and middle schools and speak to them. So you don't have to start from, I'm gonna go change the world and talk to like thousands of people. You can start by talking to 10 people, 5 people, doesn't really matter. Don't try to quantify your impact based on the number of people you're reaching out to. If not, you might be discouraged. Let's see. Hardest part about research, I would say it was balancing research and schoolwork. Let's see, I'm a height. Let's see. Let's see. I had my professor that I work with for my research. He has high expectations. And that influenced the way, and I had a lot of classes with him at around the same period of time. So it was like, he was expecting a lot from class and a lot from research. He had really impressive deadlines, like, give me this in 2 days, which was fun. So it was learning to balance, and this just comes back to speaking up. So there were times when I had to be like, no, can I ask for an extension? You need to learn to separate your personal life from your work life or your research life. It's very easy for you to feel like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go back home or go back to my dorm and I'll just work on this real quick. I'm not saying don't work on research or don't try to like get better outside of classes or outside of the lab, but for someone who works remotely, it's very hard to separate my personal time from my research time or working in general. So you need to learn to separate things so you don't get burnt out, because if you get burnt out, you can't do anything and you're done for. That was the hardest part for me.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point that you brought up about creating that connection with professors. As an undergraduate myself, I noticed that a lot of the bigger leadership opportunities on campus, like if you're like some grants that the school offers, typically they'll ask for like a faculty sponsor, or if you have a faculty sponsor, you're much more likely to get it. And in addition to like, if you want to start a club at your school, you will always need a faculty on board with it. So it's very important to build those professor connections. And those are the same people who are going to be recommending you for internships and other big projects. So I just want to remind everyone that, we've been getting good questions in the chat. We're going to keep on going with our questions, but if you come up with any questions like at all, just put in our chat, we'll answer those. But yeah, so our next question is, how do you think about and start discussions around ethical dilemmas or bias in your research or work? We can start with Trevor. Ethical dilemmas or bias.
Okay, yeah. I don't really have a whole lot of ethical dilemmas involving my research directly, I would say, but I would say with most research labs, there's usually like a review board that has to like approve everything you're doing beforehand. So like, and they pretty clearly lay out all of the ethical dilemmas or ethical guidelines that you need to like adhere to. But I would say just as like a general guideline, maybe just always kind of think about what's the best way to be, like in terms of ethics, like just what's in the best interest of a patient or of the organism that I'm working with, and framing your research in that way. And then in terms of like the removing bias, just trying to be like as objective as possible. As science is a very objective thing. It's just like you have to be very methodical about how you approach things. And so yeah, I think usually my PI and the people I've worked with, whenever I try to bounce ideas off of them, they give me pretty good feedback as to how to improve on that and just how to make sure that the research that I'm doing is valid and is scientifically sound.
Yeah, just to add on to that question, Trevor. Like as a researcher, like when you set out to start a project, you have your own idea of what the results should be in your head. Do you think that ever like clouds your judgment when it comes to looking at data, and like you look at it in a certain way, or because that bias is definitely present in the research community? So how do you think, is it there, and if so, what steps should be taken to address that, and especially in like young investigators like yourself, to kind of instill those like values of unbiased and in research?
Yeah, no, I definitely feel like there are times where I do have an expectation and stuff, and I think sometimes I get a little sad when my expectations aren't met, like with my data, or like it's like if it doesn't work the way I expected it to, then like like I initially kind of feel like, oh no, like something went wrong on my end, but really that's when science happens, and that's when more discoveries happen. So to be honest, like unexpected results are pretty good, and so that's something I've learned to like kind of just be mindful of, is like oftentimes my bias might kind of it's just not a very helpful thing. So I would say a lot of researchers I think too do something called what statisticians call p-hacking, where it's just like they just kind of hunt for very like significant results without really like finding a meaning behind it. So just trying to like be in the mindset of like you don't need this groundbreaking result, or you don't need to kind of prove something, like just like your data is like, just go with your data, and that will kind of take care of the rest. I think that is a principle that sometimes can get lost in some research, but I think it's very important to keep that in mind.
Hafiz, any thoughts on bias in research, how young investigators can avoid being biased when they're looking at data?
So definitely, like, this is definitely something for the high schoolers, at least. Like, this is not something you guys want to have to really be, I guess, confronted with for some time. But when the time does come, I think everything Trevor was saying was really important. I know one of my, I was taking a behavioral and social, animalian behavior class, or like, I can't remember. This was in senior year of high school, college. But in the class, one of the things we learned about was like how there's such a huge problem in science today with like replicability. If I'm saying it correctly, I don't think so. But anyways, the idea that like research that has been done, like a lot of groundbreaking studies, only a certain percentage of them have like actually held up and have been able to be replicated. You would think, like, if you've done research and your methods are stated a certain way, and somebody follows the methods, they should be able to get the same, similar, if not the exact same results. But a lot of times, many of these results are not able to be replicated, and it's kind of like an issue of like, why, what's going on? Like, how many groundbreaking publications have come out where people are unable to replicate it? And I remember there was one person she was talking about in our class. It was like this like up and coming like some like researcher, like he was like starting to put in a lot of publications, and like he was like making like waves in the field. And then with one of the projects they saw, they're like, like this is interesting. And they started, because when you are doing research, you have to have your methods and then your data and whatnot. And like people can add, like, they're able to ask, like, can we see further information? Like, can we see the where this stuff came from? So that's I think they asked for like his power, like wherever he had done like his actual statistical analysis. I want to say it was Excel, but I feel like that seems kind of rudimentary for the stuff that they're doing. But anyways, they went into his like data sheet and they saw that he had like a multiplier in his data to basically, like, let's say he got a result of 5, he did like a times 0.015 to make it like a larger value, a small, like in whichever way the I guess would have made the results statistically significant. And then they're like, wait, what? Like, so basically they saw that he was like jibbing his numbers, like he was falsifying his data to make significant results. And I think, I can't remember what happened to it now. I have to look into it. I think he was doing research with like spider venom or something, but it was big. Like he like lost like all of it. Now they went and looked in like the rest of the publications to see like, was he this stuff legit or was he like faking it? I don't think they can take away your degree, but he definitely like lost his tenure track professorship or wherever he was at. Like it's huge, like it's definitely a big problem. So it's important for like, I guess the next generation of scientists like us, to be aware of that, not to fall into the, I don't want to say trap, but like to just be an ethical researcher, like Troy was saying, it's not getting a statistically significant result is not like the goal. The goal is to see whether or not what you're trying to prove can be rejected or not. Like, is this information that is statistically significant? If it's not, and if it's not, that's fine, because now like, okay, maybe you have to change. Like, if you do believe it should be statistically significant, you have to change the methods in terms of how you're trying to get to a result. But also, look at the question a different way. Or beyond that, this is just kind of showing you like, okay, like this, now we understand this, let's move on to something else. Like you're still adding to the body of work ultimately at the end of the day. I think that's what's most important. If it's good research, somebody's gonna want to fund it, or you'll find a way to get it funded. And at that point, it's really just about adding to the body of work. Like what is the goal of what you're doing? Like why are you putting it out there? It's not just so that you can get like Trevor was saying, like a p-value of less than 0.05 or like 0.01. It's, you want to be able to reject or not reject your hypothesis. Beyond that, I would just say, like, at least in my own experience, I remember, so the research that I was looking at was the relationship between immigrant status, racial identity, and discrimination on dietary behaviors among college students at the University of Maryland. And so essentially what we were doing was to see like whether or not there were protective factors in someone being an immigrant or not being an immigrant on your dietary behaviors in terms of like coping. The idea was that people cope with this implicit discrimination that they face through their dietary habits, and that being an immigrant was going to be a protective mechanism against the levels of discrimination that someone would receive. And so one of the things that we saw that was interesting was that people that I can't remember this for sure, but people that had higher levels, that reported higher levels of discrimination, reported lower levels of soda drinking. And so we were like, that's interesting, because that's like the opposite of what we would expect. We thought that people would cope, like based on what the pre-existing research has shown, like people would cope with those like negative experiences and like what they, and the discrimination would cope with bad eating habits. But here the data, and that was one of the statistically significant results that we found. Now here we're saying people are responding to this discrimination with healthier habits. So that was just like, that was interesting. And that's where part of that, and the value of that, like getting a weird results, is that can be spin off and turn into its own paper in and of itself. You can now go make an entire project just based on that result alone, like trying to do further analyses, trying to understand like what are the things going on behind the scenes that would allow for this result, like what are the confounding variables, and trying to like, as opposed to now saying like, this result doesn't really make sense, I'm going to actually change the numbers to make it fit with what I think it should fit. That's not what the point of research is. And yeah.
Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of good points there, especially about kind of having a mentality when you're going into research that it's not about finding the right, it's not about getting the right result. It's about asking the right questions and just kind of building off of like taking the results that you get, even if they go against what you thought they would say, but kind of taking that into consideration and using that to form new research questions that could bring you closer to your answer. I'm taking a research methods class right now, and our professor was talking about a lot of the stuff that we're mentioning here today. Especially one thing that he brought up is like the publish or perish mentality is what he called it, which is where like especially like researchers who are like looking for grants and stuff, they have this mentality that if they don't publish their research, they won't be competitive for the grants, and then that pushes them to kind of skew the numbers in one direction or something. But I think it just kind of all goes back to that mentality and just having the correct mentality and being more interested in the answers than the results, and then being more interested in the questions than like the results and the consequences of the results. I think it's 1:10 now, and I think that's when the panel ends. But I want to make sure that Augustine, if you had any comments on that idea of bias in research, let me make sure we get your thoughts on that.
Okay, I think like both Trevor and Fizz have had like great points. I guess I have just one sentence to add. If you have to explain 3 times to your professor or to your PI, then you should be rechecking your data. It's something I learned the hard way. I was so sure like my methods were gonna work, and then I was explaining, and he was like, "But what about this? And what about this?" And I like kept trying to explain the same idea, and I was like, "No, I've come up with this groundbreaking idea, so you have to accept it." If you have to go over and you feel like you're struggling to convince the person to agree with you and not actually letting your data do the convincing, then you should probably recheck it. So I have that.
Awesome. That's a great point. So I enjoyed speaking with everyone here, with all of you here today. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your Saturdays to come here and speak with us. But I think that is all for the panel. And now we can shift it over to the closing remarks.
Okay, 1 minute.
Hi everyone. We're now going to move on to the closing remarks. Don't leave just yet because we will be talking about the new and improved Ideathon as well as prizes.
Okay, sorry about that. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so here's a rundown of tomorrow's schedule. From 10:10 to 10:40, we will be having our opening keynote speech by Mr. Sanjay Murli. He is the founder and CEO of Jogo Health, a Johnson & Johnson J-Labs company. So I encourage all of you to come for his workshop, his keynote speech, and bring anyone who's interested in listening to him. He will be speaking about his journey in the field of healthcare. And then we will be having an introduction to AI workshop from 10:40 to 11:40, held by Mr. Michael Batavia, who is an undergraduate at the NYU Tandon School of Engineering and a Regeneron semifinalist. Following that, we will be hearing from Dr. Nikki Atanasiadou and Rafael Kos, who are both accomplished researchers who worked at H2O.ai on their paths to a career in AI. And we will close the day with a fun game kit. We also want to announce our new and improved AI Ideathon. The AI Ideathon is a competition where you submit your pitch for a novel application of AI in the field of healthcare. This can be in the form of either a short 3 to 5 minute pitch video, or an abstract. Either way, your project will be judged across 5 categories: impact, feasibility, innovation, ambition, and presentation. There is no entrance fee, and the winning projects will receive cash prizes. First place will get $500, second place will get $300, and third place will get $200. The AI Ideathon is open to middle and high school students in the US, and the project submission link is live, and you submit your project using the link, which is right here. We'll also paste in the chat. And you will have until September 23rd to submit your pitch, and we will be announcing the winners on September 30th. Additionally, the winning teams may be eligible to enter the final round of interviews for internships at prestigious universities and companies like Stanford, MIT, and others. We hope that you all will continue to bring your innovative ideas into the fields of AI and beyond. Thank you.
We hope everyone enjoyed our first day of the 2021 New York Artificial Intelligence, Healthcare, and Entrepreneurship Summit. Thank you to our keynote speakers, workshop leaders, and panelists, GCL team, and our participants today. We hope you had a great time, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for our second part of our AI Summit. Have a great day.